Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Small Business Stories. In the house today, we've got Madeleine Raiford-Holland, and you say, I think I've seen her possibly on Instagram. She's got quite the following where she's focused on helping folks get the most out of short-term rentals as an investment and financial growth strategy. So we're really excited to have Madeleine on the show today. Hi, Madeleine.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're excited, as I said, because there's a lot of things that are going on right now. We try to avoid that whole politics and hot potato, but there's been changes in the federal administration. We've got macro pressures from AI and taking jobs, technology shifting, all of these kinds of things happening where people are going, what do I do to generate wealth? And you've got a tremendous strategy and track record. And so I think you're going to be tremendously valuable today to talk to our audience. So when we get into it, I like to give folks first the visual picture because a lot of our listeners come in from Spotify, iHeartRadio, and they're not getting the visual experience. So describe to our listeners the room you're in, the space where you're from, kind of they get a sense of like, oh, okay, now I'm putting some context to that voice.
Absolutely. Well, that's such a great question to start with. I am personally located in Athens, Georgia, and I'm coming to you from my own podcast studio where I film my own podcast, The Lux and the Short of It. And we take our inspiration for our studio from my short-term rental properties. And I am known for a really curated, found design. So the background that I have behind me is wood background, but it's kind of a light gray green color with a tree behind me. But we love mid-century modern style. So it's more of just clean, minimalist, but I think I prefer the term essentialist. So I am a brunette. I have kind of curly brown hair and I'm wearing a navy shirt. So
Perfect. See, now people get the sense of it. I like this. Now, this question is the one that stumps a lot of guests, and you
oh
think,
boy, I'm
why?
nervous.
I know. No, 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 no. We keep it fun. We keep it easy. I'm simply asking, what are you, Madeline, good at? Not what you do for your work, not the services you provide, but what are you really good at? What's your superpower? What is your special sauce?
My special sauce is connecting people, whether that's my friends, building relationships with people, and finding people who connect and really can make magic together.
Oh, I love that. See, and you answered it without hesitation. So clearly, it is definitely a superpower, be able to go out there and to talk to people about that and say, yeah, this is what I do. So, all the more reason why we got to get into the show here. Okay, so now that we've had the basics knocked out and the listeners are going, okay, I'm dialed in. Okay, I got a sense of where this is going. I like to talk about trending, what's happening. And when I opened the show, I talked a little bit about some of those macro drivers that are affecting wealth, financial status, growth, gains, all of this sort of stuff. Talk to us about what you're seeing from the seat that you're coming from, looking at short term rentals as a growth strategy. What are you seeing out there?
So you mentioned the macro pressures of AI. I think that is huge in like how people are investing in short-term rentals, not just how we run the short-term rental business, but I with the pending AI boom. I mean, we're in the beginning of it. I've heard somebody mention recently that AI right now is where the internet was in 1996. So think of how far we've come since 1996 and how much AI has to grow. So we are still in its infancy. But the way that people connect with each other, my superpower, is shifting dramatically. A lot of times people are going through the screens and they're not sure what's real because people are creating content with AI. And I think we're going to really see the pendulum swing to physical experiences and connection. In the next 10 years, people are going to pay people a lot of money to take walks with them. And so doubling down on physical assets and places where people can build those connections with other people, I think is the future, which is why I think that macro pressure of AI is going to be so important in the growth of short-term rentals. You also mentioned, the political side of things, and I agree. I do not like to get into the weeds of it, but just quoting facts of some legislation that's been passed with the big beautiful bill. It brought back bonus depreciation and 100% bonus depreciation. The short-term rental tax loophole is massive for people who are high income earning W-2 employees or potentially self-employed, because it allows you to qualify under the short-term rental tax loophole to offset your active income with your short-term rental depreciation. What that looks like is people like my client Kyle, who he makes $250,000 to $300,000 a year, and he is so used to paying, 5 and 6 figure tax bills, like so many of us have been used to over the years. And he bought one short-term rental and offset his entire tax liability and got a refund to the tune of $50,000 for the first time. So what we're seeing is all of these physicians, all of these engineers, all of these people in tech who are so used to just paying more than their fair share in taxes, who have always just been used to paying it in, paying it in, paying it in, they can keep their career and qualify for these tax benefits through short-term rentals and offset all of that active income with one property. And then we teach them how to run it in just a few hours a week, so it's not taking over their life. So it's such a powerful vehicle to have that 100% bonus depreciation piece. I actually have a freebie. I don't know if you want me to offer that to your listeners.
Sure,
I'd be happy to.
In the
I'd be
notes.
happy to share that because it explains it in plain language. It's a little bit complex to understand, but it's powerful if you know how to use it.
Oh, but that's why you're here. You're opening up people's eyes to these different possibilities. And then ideally, like when the podcasts go well and we've got guests like yourself who have the experience and the expertise, you explain it, because everybody learns differently. Some people want that tip sheet or that visual expression of it. Other people are auditory learners, and so they're hearing and listening it. And some of us are, a mix of both. And so we want to try to be able to figure out, okay, what is that? Let me look. Let me get a little more detail. So
love that.
Perfect. This is what we need. And with respect to AI, one of the things that I've been reading a lot about, because I'm in tech, is that we shifted first from the great displacement era. So this is what we're in now. People are being displaced for various reasons, be it economic drivers, even be it advances in technology, similarly to what we saw in the Rust Belt in the 70s and into the 80s with the replacement of folks who are on the factory lines through robotics. And that's what's starting. But what's interesting, of course, is that now it's not affecting the blue collar workers, it's affecting the white collar workers. And people are up in arms about that. And so what the interesting piece is that we're just at the tip of the great displacement era. But what's coming is the great replacement era, where we'll be replaced by humanoids like silicone, robotics combinations with AI and AI in itself. So we need to think really seriously about this. So talk to me about where you see the biggest opportunities right now in the short-term rental space.
So are you meaning in the investment in them or the running of the business? Because I teach people how to do both, and I see potential on both sides, but I want to hear what you want me to go down into.
Well, I hadn't thought about the operational piece. Let's come back to that. Let's answer this in a two-part, if you would. So first, where should those investments be placed right now? What looks like an up-and-coming opportunity? A few years ago, it was storage lockers, and that seems to have been saturated. So let's hear where the investment should be. And then the second piece, because we have a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs, where can they gain operational efficiencies in the running of their short-term rental businesses? Because you're right, there's really room for both.
Absolutely. So when we are teaching people how to choose markets to invest in, we take a very personalized approach because everybody's financial situation is different and everyone's investment goals are a little bit different. So we reverse engineer it, and we always ask people to look at the cash that they want to allocate towards this investment, because it kind of reverse back into how much cash you have on hand. That's typically the limiting factor. So if let's say somebody has $100,000. Most of the time, people can invest in a short-term rental with a 10% down second home loan. So if their debt to income ratio supports it, their top bit budget would be $1 million with $100,000. So that's where they would look. I like to back it up a little bit. And let's say for simple math, $50,000, $500,000 property. For that amount, you're typically not going to downtown Miami with that budget, because we want you to have a top tier, upper echelon property in whatever market you choose, because we focus on having a quality portfolio instead of a quantity and a bunch of different rentals. So what we want people to do, and you can leverage AI to do this, is figure out what your budget is and then start looking at markets within an hour of your home base. You would be so surprised how many smaller to mid-sized markets that are hidden gems are within an hour of home. It's not a requirement, but I would say, what are the businesses or what are the towns that have nuclear plants, regional hospitals, have other draws to them outside of just your typical vacation markets? There's so much potential in, again, these small to mid-sized markets because the prices are a little bit lower, but people are still traveling there, whether that's for work. And you can use AI to help search these markets. We also utilize AI to help search the short-term rental regulations in that market. We've got prompts that we typically give our clients if we're coaching them through this process. But once they narrow in on a market, we leverage AI tools to help us know what the buy box is within that market. So what type of property? Is it a 3-bedroom, 2-bath because the area attracts families, or is it a 2-bed, 1-bath because we have an individual traveling and they want to have a guest room with an office? So we use AI tools to help us narrow down those markets, but it's super individualized to the person and their investing goals and strategies. So then once we narrow down a market, then we are either leveraging our local real estate agents, because sometimes you gotta put eyes on the place. You got to put eyes on the place. And that's something that I don't think that AI will necessarily replace, is that human factor of the touch, the feel, the space, the neighborhood, the surroundings. Is it noisy? Those are things that you have to do somewhat in person. But then we want people to understand how to physically set up the space for their ideal guest avatar. And a lot of times we get very granular with our guest avatar. We name them. We want to know where their shopping tendencies are. What are they watching on Netflix? Or are they Hulu people? Are they Apple listeners or Spotify listeners? Like, we get that granular when we're thinking about our short-term rental guests. And so we can set up that property specifically for them. What are their preferences? What do they like? What are they looking for when they're looking for a place in this area? And then this leads us to that operational efficiency piece. We leverage our technology tools. We use a property management software, which allows us to list on Airbnb, Vrbo, and even more importantly, our direct booking website, because we want people to build their own book of business. And I think that's a lesson that regardless of what type of business you're in as a small business owner, it is an owned versus a rented audience. So social media is a rented audience, folks, and then your email list is your own audience. We view Airbnb and Vrbo as that rented audience, a great place to generate leads. And then our direct booking website is where we cultivate our own book of business and keep guests coming back time and time and time again. So all of those, we leverage AI tools in most all of those processes, but it helps be a force multiplier in this business so you can truly run it efficiently.
So you said a lot in there. Let me break down some of the things just to highlight a couple. So one, talking about owned assets, specifically your customer base, right? Rather than renting it out. I like how you phrased that again, that rental mindset, Instagram and these kinds of things. Even if you've produced a book on Amazon that's selling well, you don't get the names and the leads of the people who have purchased your book. Sure, you get the exposure, of course, that only Amazon can bring as an author, but you don't get the list. So I think that's really important. You also talked about within the 1 hour from home, and you didn't say this, so I'm asking specifically. Is that because if you start to go too far away from home, you're less likely to be involved, property maintenance issues, things like that, and potentially compromising what could be a good reputation because you just can't get there in time or you're not spending enough time. Talk to us about why that 1 hour from home is so important.
That 1 hour from home is really just a starting point because what I find that when people get started, they get analysis paralysis and they need a place to start from. I have people who live in California and host in the Poconos, on the other side of the country. I host personally in 3 different states, and my team supports. And we put the systems in place to where it doesn't matter where you are supported within it. But most of the time, people just need a place to start and they discount what's around them. And specifically for the first property, there's always a learning curve, no matter what type of mentorship or support you get from my team or somebody else. Like, there's always a learning curve that you have with property number one. So you may as well start within an hour of home so you can at least get there pretty quickly and then branch out. But it's not a hard and fast rule. Like I said, I have people who are hosting on the opposite coast because it makes a little bit more sense because they prices in California, their budget made more sense for the East Coast. And that's perfectly fine. We help people sort through those things. But if you're looking for a place to start, you may as well start in your backyard.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and then you also mentioned the importance of noise. Like, who wants to live in a noisy neighborhood? I know I love it in the mornings. I walk with my dog. We walk very early. It's still dark. We're up before the sun has risen. And we have the neighborhood to ourselves, except the deer, the bunnies, the fox,
Love it.
the chipmunks and the birds. It's ours. And it's beautiful. It's just so quiet, except for the birds starting to chirp as they wake up. And I love it. Can you give us a couple of other data points that people should be looking at when they're evaluating a neighborhood? You talked about noise. What else should they think about?
Noise is definitely one thing. But the other, I mentioned their goals and priorities. A lot of people, when they get into the short term rental space, they want somewhere that they can go for a week or two out of the year and enjoy it themselves. And so that's when we're looking for specifics of data points to look for in a market, it's very market specific and things that you will need to be successful in that market. So let's say this individual is a physician and they live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they want a little spot to escape to in the mountains of North Carolina. So we would be looking for a place that either has a view in the mountains or is on some sort of creek or water. Those two things are very important when you're looking at a mountain market. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to need a hot tub in that property in a mountain market to be successful. On the flip side, let's say we have somebody in Dothan, Alabama, and they are an engineer at the nuclear plant and they want to invest in the panhandle of Florida. So, what they are going to be looking for in that market is typically walking distance to the beach, if not on the beach, and some sort of access to a pool. Specifically in the 30A area, it's bonus points if you have like a bicycle or a golf cart, so you can go to all the little shops in town. So, it's very market specific, but knowing your guest avatar, like we talked about, using AI to really build that out, you'll understand what they are coming to your area to do, and you'll be able to look at the things that they value in a stay. So you like to walk with your dog. So we would say, hey, we need walking paths. We need someplace that's not on a major road. I don't know if you work from home or when you travel, but that might be something that we want to make sure that we cater to is high-speed internet and a place to put a laptop and work. So there are all these little things that go into making a successful property, and it boils down to knowing what your market competition is doing and what you need to do, and then what your guest avatar is looking for that area.
Perfect. So if we just keep breaking it down, it sounds like you've talked about a couple of different rental, I guess, categories, if we
Mhm.
call them that. One is that vacation home style, and then one is the maybe it's the digital nomad, the
Mhm.
working professional. Are there other categories of short-term rental that people should be thinking about?
Yeah. So I started my portfolio in a college town, which seems a little bit crazy. I mentioned in the very beginning that I'm from Athens, Georgia, which is home to the University of Georgia. And so we've had a pretty decent football team for the last few years. And I love college towns and college markets because there's a constant draw of people. And so of course, we get people coming in for football games, which we are able to charge a premium for, but there's also graduations. And then there's parents coming to visit their kids. But we also get a fair amount of traveling professionals or people who are coming to work at the university. And sometimes that's construction workers. And so, kind of a college town, or I mentioned places that have industry draw. So, a nuclear plant is really solid. Regional hospitals that might be the largest hospital around for several counties that people travel to. You also get traveling nurses and traveling doctors, and those are more of what we call a midterm stay. So more than like 30 days or more, but less than 6 months.
Okay, very good. You mentioned earlier in the podcast about regulations and a lot of
Mhm.
things going on. I would imagine that some of your clients just have that initial freak out, like, "Ah, what do I need to do? What's going to happen? Am I at risk? Do I need insurance?" Of course you do. But how do I, right? How do I prepare for this to think about what the potential liability is if you're renting a property to people? Never mind the what might happen to your property as well as the people, right? They could burn it
So
down.
So those are typically two separate issues. And so we address the short-term rental regulations before somebody ever starts running numbers and analyzing deals in a market. So we always encourage people to do a quick Google search or leverage AI to do a search of the short-term rental regulations in blank town. So there is the like city, county, municipality level regulations that we have to look for. And a lot of times that's broken down by zone. And you can find that on the zoning websites. It's great if they have an interactive zoning map to where you can plug in a certain address that you're looking at and see if it falls within the zone. But we always encourage people to take it one step further and actually pick up the phone and call planning and zoning, because you never know if they have some ordinance coming down the pipe that they haven't updated their website for. So use technology for the initial piece, and then don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call. That's the first part. And then we get down to the property specific level of regulations. HOAs can be the bane of our existence. And make sure that if you are looking at a specific property, you read the HOA documents before you ever invest a dime into that thing, because it could be fine with the city or county or municipality, but that specific HOA is just not going to ever allow it. And so check those boxes too before you ever commit to a property. So that's the regulation side of things. They are totally manageable. And I actually prefer to have some regulations in place because it means that the area has already addressed short-term rentals and you know what you're getting into. So then we go over to the insurance piece of actually running your business. And there are two types of insurance coverage that I recommend for people who want to get into a short term rental business. One is the dwelling policy, and there are several short term rental specific companies. Two that I love that I always get quotes from are Steadily and then Proper Insurance. So, those are short term rental specific coverages that typically have some level of general liability attached as well, but they also have things like bed bug coverage. Like, God forbid you get bed bugs, but they cover the loss of revenue for it as well as the like remediation of the situation. Just some like nuanced things. So that's the dwelling policy, but then there's also the reservation specific coverage. So instead of charging a security deposit, which is kind of a rub for most people, nobody wants to have a hold on their card for $500. They pay an administration or a trust and safety fee as part of their reservation, which is actually a policy that is specific to their stay, that if they damage things, I have up to $5,000 in contents coverage with a $0 deductible. So if they break a wine glass, I'm not coming back to charge them for it. If they stain sheets. But my favorite story for that reservation specific policy is we had a construction worker, a group of 4 gentlemen who were staying at our property, and he called me in a panic because his boss had booked the place. And he said, "Ma'am, I am so sorry. I do not know how to tell you this, but I sat down a little too hard on the toilet and I broke the bowl. And there is water everywhere. The toilet is broken. My boss is worried that you are going to charge him to have this fixed. He wants me to replace it because we're in construction." And I'm like, you know what? It sounds like you've had a really hard day. Do not worry about it. We'll get that. We'll get a plumber out there. We'll get it replaced at no charge to you or your boss. And so what we did was we filed it on that reservation specific coverage. It covered the emergency plumbing fee, it covered the toilet, and we got to be gracious host. And they ended up coming back to stay with us for 5 more weeks. So that just shows that having those things in place and being able to give some grace, even though we could have charged them for it, and rightly so, being able to do that, it gained us revenue moving forward because we were able to extend that courtesy.
Oh, I love it. I mean, these are the tips. That's why we've got to have experts like you available to us and find out, it's like, okay. Another question here, Madeleine. When folks are thinking about, okay, maybe I've got a couple of properties, because you talked about the emphasis on quality, not quantity, at what point should they consider having a property maintenance team or group help them? Like you talked about, your program specifically teaches people how to do that so they don't get overwhelmed, so they can manage it. And so versus having their rental property manage them and take over their lives. Talk to us about some of those potential warning signs, or hey, if this is your situation, you probably need a maintenance company, versus if you can do this and this, you'll be fine.
So we teach people to set up those systems, and getting their boots on the ground team is what we call them. So your cleaner and your handyman from day one, and then putting the systems, processes, and automation so that they can continue to manage that internally themselves as their business grows. And instead of outsourcing it to a property management company where they're going to take, the going rate is 25, 30, 35% off the top of their revenue, we encourage bringing on virtual assistants and plugging that additional team member into your existing business with your systems and processes in order to grow and scale that way.
Very good. I think that's, you can even virtual assistants, right? We all know there's offshore talent available that is available 24/7, high quality, high competency, low cost, right? It's a wonderful combination.
Totally. And me personally, my team, I have 5 individuals who are from the Philippines. They call themselves the MHM Manila team, and they are just the most wonderful humans. And I hired them directly from, they were training managers at Airbnb. And so they trained the trainers. So they were extremely familiar with the short term rental space, but they also understood the back channels of, if there is a guest issue, the right buzzwords to say, and all of our things there. And so we actually started offering that to our mentorship clients, to place those types of individuals who are very familiar with short term rentals into their business in order to help them grow and scale.
Oh, it's the triple win. The customers benefit, right? The team that's growing in the Philippines benefits, and the people who are engaging in, STR, short-term rentals. Look at me now using acronyms. Woohoo! Short-term
I know,
rentals,
look at you.
right? As their financial growth strategy. And I could keep talking forever because you've got a wealth of knowledge, but I want to be conscious of your time and our listeners' time. Madeleine, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram. That's where I show up the most and share all sorts of short term rental tips as well as business strategy. That's at Madeleine Raiford-Holland. And my name has a little bit of a strange spelling. So I'm going to spell it for you. It's Madelene Holland, Holland. And that's also my website. And I also share a lot of tips on my podcast, which is The Lux and the Short of It.
And of course, we'll have all of those links in the show, including that wonderful tip sheet that you offered to share folks so that they can get access to that. Last question. It is our signature question. If we got to peek into your closet, and there was a pair of footwear, might be shoes, sandals, boots, I don't know, whatever it is, but that footwear speaks to you, Madeleine Raiford-Holland, right? Like your personality, it just represents who you are. And when you put them on, you feel like $1,000,000. Like what are we looking at? Describe it to us and why it's your
You
personality.
are looking at a chunky sneaker. So
Did not peg you in that.
I bet not.
No,
So
no.
the other thing, I have two little boys. They are 4 and 2, and they are my pride and joy, but they keep me on my toes. And so I'm a sneaker fanatic. They're comfortable, but I like to have a pop of color on them and have them coordinate. So I probably have, 8 to 10 pair of really comfy, like statement sneakers that make me feel like $1,000,000.
That's why I love asking the question.
It's a great
I'm
one.
there's the well, right. I mean, every once in a while I get thrown a curveball. You just threw a curve there. I'm like, I didn't have you pegged as a sneaker gal because you're very professionally made up. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, maybe some stilettos, maybe something, don't know.
Back in the
Sneakers
day,
now.
I was a stiletto girl back in the day. And I also live on a farm. So you mentioned the goat or the deer and the rabbits and all that. I have horses and goats and all the things and chase 2 little boys. So sneakers are a must.
Yes, these stilettos don't do well in farms. No,
No.
not in farmland. No, no, no. So with that, folks, that is a wrap. Thank you for tuning in. Again, Madeleine Raiford-Holland. You'll find all of the links in our notes. Thank you very much for being on part of the show and teaching us about short-term rentals as a financial growth strategy. Thank you, Madeleine.
Thanks, Loralyn. Great.